Thank you, Ms. Moreno. The February 16, 2021 meeting of the Paramount City Council is now called to order. May I have roll call of council members?
Councilmember Aguayo.
Here.
Councilmember Guillen.
Here.
Councilmember Quer-Stallings.
Here.
Vice Mayor Olmos.
Here.
Mayor Lemons.
Here. With that, we'll move to City Council public comment updates.
There are no updates, Madam Mayor.
Okay, do we have public comments?
Yes, we do. We have two public comments. Both of them are oral. The first one that we have is from Mr. Alejandro Yanez, and Andrew will get Mr. Yanez on the line.
Hello.
Good evening. This is the City of Paramount calling for Alejandro Yanez.
This is me.
Hey, Mr. Yanez, can you give us 1 second, please? We're getting an echo here, and I don't know if it's on our end or your end. Can you just make sure your devices are muted? Okay. We're calling regarding your request for public comment for the Paramount City Council meeting. You're now being broadcast live to the City Council, and your time will start now.
Hello and good afternoon, councilwomen, as well as staff. I'm Alejandro Yanez, longtime resident of Paramount. It feels like I'm being advised by council. I went by protocol. I followed the rules of decorum. Yet I was not given my 3 minutes from the last meeting. Due to what I was told, there's technical difficulties. I'm asking in fairness for more time.
Yeah, you ask Mr. Yanez.
It's no secret ongoing efforts.
Have him pause.
Mr. Yanez, 1 second, please.
Is there anything that you guys can do within the chambers? There's a very strong echo. It's difficult to understand anything, and it was happening before you called Mr. Yanez.
Okay. We are here. I hear that echo too, Andrew. Okay, Mayor, we'll pause right now, public comment, since we are getting the feedback. Are you hearing the feedback from my voice, Mayor?
No, I am not.
Okay. Andrew went to the back right now to see if there's anything we can do on the AV side of things. It sounds like it's just from the phone call, maybe.
Well, but it was happening before he called Alex.
Oh, it was happening when you heard my voice and Andrew's voice? Oh, I heard two.
You're echoing again now.
Okay, we're actually looking, somebody might be on speaker or something. Okay, we're looking, oh, what about the podium? No, the podium's off. How about now? Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Is there an echo?
Okay at the moment.
Okay. Okay. It's not us then. Oh, interesting.
Well, have Andrew say something before he brings Mr. Yanez back,
Okay.
and let's see if it's at his mic.
Hi, Mayor Lemons. This is Andrew. How's the echo now? Is there an echo?
I do not hear an echo right now.
Okay.
So we'll try it again
So
with
you
Mr.
can-
Yanez.
Yeah, start Mr. Yanez's time over, and we'll try it again.
Great. Thank you. 1 moment, please.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Yanez. This is the City of Paramount again. We apologize for the technical difficulties. As mentioned, we're calling regarding your request for public comment, and you're being broadcast live now to the City Council, and your 3 minutes have been restarted, and we'll go ahead and start it now.
Okay. Again, good afternoon, councilwomen. Again, it feels like I'm being picked on for whatever reason. It should only be fair that I be given more time, being that I didn't get my 3 minutes from last week, from the last meeting. Regardless, it's no secret about our ongoing efforts to have our outdoor recreational handball courts rebuilt. In doing so, I bring to the attention of the discrimination that came from council as well as staff. Mayor, last November, and again in the first meeting of January, I asked you and the Parks and Recreation Director stated in the last the lack of interest in our handball sports. Again, did you ever, 27 years as a council member, ever meet with or speak with any resident handball participant? Trust, we understand why you publicly never answered the question, nor you or the Director of Parks. Mayor, I would like to go on record to let you know personally, you've supported and discriminated against me personally and other resident handball participants, both in age and in race. I would like to make it clear you discriminated against me, Mayor Lemons. It's a shame. Mayor and Vice Mayor, being that you were the Mayor Lemons selected Public Safety Commissioner, the both of you never met with any resident handball player at any time in any public service, although your position was to serve the public, not just girls softball. As we start to turn the corner in this pandemic and residents begin the process of seeking recreation in our city, not surrounding city, but in our city, the city that we pay taxes for public use, for public service. In the last 10 years, in going after this request for recreational handball, I've learned that senior citizens, on average, get $300,000 a year from our city budget, not Proposition 68, which is what we're being asked for to keep on waiting for Proposition 68 grant money, which I don't think is fair. Why is it that the senior citizens always get the money, yet when we ask for money to be put in the budget for our handball request, we have to beg the state? We shouldn't have to beg the state. It's our money, not your money, Mayor, not your money, Vice Mayor, or any other council member or staff. It's our city money for recreational use for the residents, not for anything else. There's a lot of other things.
Mr. Yanez, you have 20 seconds left.
I understand that we have a lot of other concerns because of the pandemics, and by no means am I downgrading that. But people are going to request recreation. It's not fair that I keep getting cut out of time and not given more time, even though I get cut off. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have another speaker.
Yes, Madam Mayor, next speaker is Mr. Gerald Serta, and he's getting on the phone right now.
Hello?
Hello, this is the City of Paramount calling for Gerald Serta.
Yes, this is Gerald Serta.
Hi, Mr. Serta. We're calling regarding your request for public comment at the Paramount City Council meeting. You're being broadcast live to the City Council. You'll have 3 minutes to give your comments, and your time will start now.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank the city and the council members, the mayor, for everything that's been going on in Paramount, especially during this pandemic. But I do want to bring up a concern. I did get a citation, a parking citation, back in 2019 in the alleyway of our complex, of the apartment complex. And I know that we've discussed the parking issues with the parking commission, and it's been brought up to the council before, and it's been mentioned that that property is private property. And this is per the public safety director, and I know the city manager also agreed to it last time, that the area in the alleyway behind the apartments is private property. However, they're still given citations back there. Now, I started challenging this ticket, and I started the process. Unfortunately, I fell ill, and I was in and out for treatment, and I wasn't able to finish the process. But I mentioned it to public safety director about the citation and how to continue challenging this ticket. I was told that because time has passed, that it's already too late to challenge that ticket. And I figured there has to be something in place to continue challenging this ticket. And I asked if this ticket could be brought up to court so that we can challenge it. And I was informed that yes, it could be done. So I tried looking at the court in Compton for the traffic department and criminal traffic, and I spoke to the supervisors there, and they informed me that I needed to go back to the city and get specific instructions and how to challenge that ticket through the court in that is the last option in challenging that ticket. So I want to bring that up to the city and seeing how I can challenge the ticket and maybe recoup that money of a citation that was done on private property by public safety officer back in 2019. Also, the citation has the wrong address. That street doesn't exist in Paramount, and that address doesn't exist. So I brought that up to the public safety director, but they're saying, well, it's in the vicinity, it's in the area. Usually, when the information is incorrect or misleading, the tickets are
Mr.
dismissed.
Serta, you have 20 seconds left.
So I want to challenge that, and I want to see what the mayor or the city council can do about this ticket in the process in challenging this citation. But I do want to thank you very much, and my number, you have my number. If I need to get in touch with you or you need to get in touch with me, this way I can try to dispute this as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Serta. We'll certainly speak with the public safety director and see if there's additional information that we can gather and get to you so that at least you know what the process is for the ticket. Is that all of the speakers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So with that, we will move into the consent calendar. May I have a motion for approval?
So moved. Councilmember Cuellar Stallings.
Councilmember Aguayo seconds.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Cuellar Stallings and seconded by Councilmember Aguayo that we approve the consent calendar. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aguayo,
Yes.
Councilmember Guillen,
Yes.
Councilmember Cuellar Stallings,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Olmos,
Yes.
Mayor Lemons.
Yes. The next item is a public hearing on ordinance number 1148. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. This is a reintroduction of the ordinance that changes the zoning at the northwest corner of Paramount Boulevard and 70th Street. The zone change, if approved, would allow for a mixed-use retail/senior living complex. As you may recall, this was pulled from the agenda at the last council meeting in order to allow staff some time to revise the list of allowable retail uses that could go in there on the bottom floor of this development. The list has been revised, and we're now recommending that all retail uses fall under a conditional use permit process, and this would go before the Planning Commission. Each application would. And this will allow them the opportunity to evaluate proposed business uses and take into consideration such things as parking and noise. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. John Carver, who will go through the item. John?
Thank you, John. Mayor Lemons and council members. This item is a request for a zone change from C3 to PDPS mixed-use commercial and senior assisted independent living facility. The zone change will allow for a mixed-use development with retail on the bottom floors and residential units on the second and third floors. Property is located at 16675 to 16683 Paramount Boulevard. The 13,500 square foot property is occupied by a bar, which is closed right now due to COVID, and an auto repair business. At its meeting on January 12, 2021, the City Council approved a general plan amendment from Central Business District to mixed-use commercial and senior assisted and independent living facility at the subject site. The Council also introduced ordinance number 1148 and placed it on the February 2nd, 2021 consent calendar for adoption. Ordinance 1148 changes the zoning from general commercial to PDPS mixed-use assisted independent living. Here's a look at the property on Paramount Boulevard, highlighted in purple. It's at the northwest corner of Paramount 70th. And just a quick look again at some other mixed use in the city of Paramount. And a reminder of what the project will look like. There are 27 parking places that are proposed on the bottom floor. After further review of the parking, staff requested that the ordinance be removed from the February 2nd consent calendar to allow time to address the potential parking impacts to the surrounding neighborhood. We are proposing that a conditional use permit be required for the office and retail uses on the ground floor suites. A CUP will allow for mitigation of nuisance factors. For example, a bar operates late into the evening, so noise has to be mitigated. A medical office requires increased parking, so a conditional use permit allows for a parking analysis. To address parking concerns with this project, again, a conditional use permit requirement has been added to the ordinance for all permitted uses, with the exception of the residential uses. A conditional use permit will allow each proposed use to be evaluated individually. If an analysis of a business finds that there isn't sufficient parking, then the use could be denied. Alternatively, if additional parking could be found at a nearby site, the use could be approved. And we're recommending that you introduce Ordinance 1148, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to give testimony in favor of this item?
There have been no comments submitted in favor, Madam Mayor.
Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
None in opposition either.
Okay, are there questions from council members regarding this item? Is
Mayor
there any-
Dunn,
Yes,
I have just one quick question.
sure.
John, do we know if there's where would the overflow of parking be? So if, where the CPUs go through and, they put in a barber shop or whatever, if we're looking around that area, if you show the little map, is there the only public parking or overlap, the only public parking or extra parking would be on the street, is that correct?
Well, they could look at the Methodist Church to see if they could lease parking there. There's also our parking lot, just another block north, hospital/Civic Center parking. So there are off-street parking options.
Okay, because there's also that parking across the street where the medical office is, right? Across
Yes.
the street, but okay.
Right,
There's no crosswalk there, correct?
that's correct.
Okay.
Is there anyone else?
I have a question. John, since Brenda brought that up, in the near future, would you be considering putting a crosswalk from 70th Street to the senior residence building?
It's not something that we're looking at right now. It's something that obviously could be looked at in the future.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Anyone else? If not, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second, Quer Stallings.
Been moved by Vice Mayor Olmos, seconded by Councilmember Cuellar Stallings that we close the public hearing. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aguayo,
Yes.
Councilmember Guillen,
Yes.
Councilmember Quer Stallings,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Olmos,
Yes.
Mayor Lemons.
Yes. Now I'll entertain a motion on the item, please.
So moved, almost.
Second, Aguayo. Okay, been moved by Vice Mayor Olmos, seconded by Councilmember Aguayo, that we read by title only, waive further reading, reintroduce ordinance number 1148, zone change number 230, and place it on the next regular agenda for adoption. May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aguayo,
Yes.
Councilmember Guillen,
Yes.
Councilmember Quer Stallings,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Olmos,
Yes.
Mayor Lemons.
Yes. Next, we have a report for the 2020 Public Safety Year in Review.
Yes, Madam Mayor and council members, thank you very much. Today we have a special guest, two special guests in our audience. The first is our Lakewood Station Captain David Springle, who will provide the annual Public Safety Year in Review. Captain Springle will go over the crime statistics from 2020 and tell us about some crime trends. And then after Captain Springle goes, we will also have Deputy District Attorney Kelly Tatman come up and go over some information from the District Attorney's Office. So with that, I'll turn it over to Captain David Springle. Captain Springle? There you go.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor Lemons and Council, for allowing me to address you tonight. In my public safety review this evening, I will be discussing Part 1 crimes, which include property crime, to include burglary, grand theft auto, larceny, and arson, and crimes against persons, which include murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. On behalf of our Sheriff Alex Villanueva and the many men and women proudly serving the city of Paramount, I am humbled to address you tonight. As we look at this past year, what a crazy and unpredictable year it was. We were faced with the COVID-19 pandemic, protests, civil unrest, crime trends, and other quality of life issues. We made it through the year strong, but would not have experienced the positives we did without the strong partnership we proudly share with the city of Paramount. I would like to thank you, Mayor Lemons, your fellow council members, City Manager John Moreno, and Public Safety Director Adriana Lopez for the leadership, supportive partnership, and the resources you provided our personnel for success. Success does not come easy or free, and our department, along with your city team, worked tirelessly this past year to ensure the protection of life and property for all. COVID-19 has impacted us all. I would especially like to thank Kindred Hospital Paramount's amazing staff who have worked to assist our personnel in both getting the vaccination. I have personally had both vaccination shots without issue and highly suggest the vaccination for not only my personnel, but each of you in the community when the opportunity comes. Our station saw our share of protests to include the one here in Paramount at our substation. With the efforts of many to include those choosing to demonstrate, we had no issues to report and are thankful for the positive support our personnel have received from the community, which we are proud to be a part of. Civil unrest broke out in May and did impact our station. I am pleased to say with proactive efforts from our personnel and the partnership shared with the city, the impact to the city of Paramount was minimal. Our personnel continue to remain focused on the protection of life and property. In the 2020 calendar year, Part 1 crime saw an overall decrease of 1%. More importantly, violent crime saw a decrease of 24%. The increase in property crime of 6% was consistent with crime trends seen in 2020, especially in grand theft auto and other theft-related crimes. This was especially driven by Zero Bail Initiative to limit the jail population. With no bite to crime when caught, crooks took to stealing again and again and again. And when caught and released, right back to capering again and again. We continue to be active in our efforts to combat these theft-related crimes. There was a positive decrease in crimes against persons, with the only increase seen in rape, where there was one additional incident reported from the previous year. Of the 17 reported incidents in 2020, 4 occurred in prior years and were reported last year, with all but one of the incidents involving a suspect who was known to our victim. The huge drop in crimes against persons was a big positive in 2020. Regarding the auto theft challenge we face, common vehicles stolen are older model Hondas, Toyotas, and Chevy trucks. We recommend using a club, parking in well-lit areas with good visibility, and properly securing your vehicle when parked to minimize thefts. There was an increase in arson, which was mostly limited to small incidents with limited property damage. Although the number of incidents increased, none of the incidents brought any sustained concern for the safety of the community. there was a slight decrease in calls for service last year. Our hope is that with a decrease in calls, it allows for our personnel to be that much more visible in the community. We saw a positive drop in response times in each type of call for service. There was a reduction in arrests consistent with a reduction in calls for service and overall crime. Arrests were also impacted by COVID-19 and less people out on the street during lockdown. We continue to be proactive in our efforts to protect life and property while working to address quality of life issues within the city. I am thankful for the partnership our department shares with the city's public safety team and City Manager Moreno. This partnership is key in combating areas most impacting the city of Paramount. Traffic enforcement, a major component to public safety, saw an increase in speeding citations with a slight decrease in other traffic-related citations. Other investments in traffic safety include a license plate reader trailer, which we utilized at times in a number of areas to include our work combating the ongoing street racing issue, which is a problem in a number of cities throughout the area. Additionally, the city has supported our station's street racing task force, which is deployed in Paramount since its inception near the end of 2020. The results have been positive, with the task force aggressively addressing both street racers and the crowd who gather, often utilizing the new city ordinances, which have led to an increased success in our efforts to combat illegal street racing and intersection takeovers. The city and your SAO team have worked diligently on this problem, and I'm very proud of the successes we have seen. City staff and our personnel partner to provide service to our homeless population while trying to minimize the impact of homelessness within the city. Our personnel try to be accessible to the community in a number of ways, to include Neighborhood Watch. We are always looking to find new and exciting ways to have a positive impact with the residents and business owners within the city. The delivery of service by law enforcement during 2020 was heavily scrutinized. This was not always specific to Lakewood Station, but to the profession, and will continue to be a talking point for many. At Lakewood Station, we remain a proud and diverse bunch of people doing a difficult job, quite often really well, while sometimes making mistakes. We are not perfect, but we continue striving for excellence. We proudly serve the community as part of what I believe is the gold standard of law enforcement, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Our department always works to evolve in an ever-changing climate and continues to work positively in challenging times, especially the work being done by our deputy personnel serving your community. A new way this continues to show is Lakewood Station's implementation of the body-worn camera program, with our staff trained and utilizing the cameras during our daily field operations. These cameras will not solve or answer every question, but will allow the department to identify areas of concern immediately and help us quickly address other issues related to our personnel and their actions. I expect these cameras will help our deputies grow and exhibit the incredible professionalism which is expected of us all, while also protecting our deputies from unfair scrutiny and/or false allegations. Our goal for 2021 is for our personnel to play an active part in the Paramount community by building public trust and positive relationships through proactive community policing. As I close, I would like to thank you, Mayor Lemons, your council, City Manager Moreno, Public Safety Director Lopez, and the Paramount community for the support and partnership we continue to share. May we each continue to adapt and overcome the the new and ever-changing challenges which confront us, and may God bless us all. At this time, I'm going to give way to Deputy District Attorney Kelly Tapman, and I will be available for any questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Lemons and Council. Just to pick up where Captain Sprengel left off, there were some significant challenges in 2020 that the City and Sheriff's Department had to deal with, as well as the District Attorney's Office. But the most prevalent challenge that we faced, it was in the form of street racing. And with the Council's help, back in August of 2020, and with a significant effort by City Attorney John Kavanaugh, City Council passed 2 street racing ordinances that gave the Sheriff's Department the tools they needed to combat this problem and deter this type of activity in the city. First, we had Ordinance 1134, which granted the tools we needed for forfeiture of nuisance vehicles that engage in motor speed contests or exhibition of speeds. This ordinance allowed an avenue for the city to pursue forfeiture of vehicles used in street racing and exhibition of speed. The second ordinance was 1135, which prohibited spectators at motor speed contests and exhibition of speed. This gave law enforcement the tools to capture spectators who are often mostly part of the problem in these exhibitions of speed and street racing contests. They help the speed racers by blocking intersections and shutting down intersections so those who engage in the speed contest can do their thing in the intersection and damage our street and our roadways. The 2 strategies that we as a city and the Sheriff's Department came up with were twofold. First, the Special Assignment Team operations via the Federal Department of Justice Cobid grant. These operations conducted by the Special Assignment Team were fully funded by the grant without money out of the city funds. Beginning in November through January, there were 3 operations conducted by our Special Assignment Team. Each operation was 8 hours in length and targeted only street racers in the city of Paramount. During those 3 operations, there were a total of 49 citations issued, 13 for modified exhaust, 14 for spectating, and in all fairness, there were 7 impounds conducted by the Special Assignment Team. Not all of those impounds occurred during the operations, but were executed by members of the Special Assignment Team. Of those 7 impounds, we had 5 forfeiture hearings. At the forfeiture hearings, which the administrative hearing was the first step in forfeiture, a hearing officer would listen to the evidence presented, which most typically were the facts in the police report, gave the registered owner an opportunity to be heard, and either release the vehicle back to the registered owner under certain legal elements, or allowed the vehicle to remain in impound and incur fees, which makes it very challenging to the registered owner once the 30 days are up for them to retrieve their vehicle if a forfeiture is not pursued. Also during these Special Assignment Team operations, there were numerous arrests, which included arrests for warrants, 1 felon with a firearm, and driving on suspended licenses. On average, the Special Assignment Team had 16 citations that were related to street racing for each operation. The second mode of attack that we had was the Street Racing Task Force. The Street Racing Task Force was formed in early December 2020, and the idea behind that was to have 2 deputies from Paramount, 2 deputies from the city of Lakewood, and 2 deputies from the city of Bellflower to work in concert with one another 2 nights during the weekend, so Friday and Saturday night. They conducted the Street Racing Task Force operations in every weekend in December, with the exception of Christmas weekend, all the way through January. As far as the Street Racing Task Force, they worked 10-hour shifts for a total of 7 weekends, so a total of 14 nights the task force was out and about in the 3 cities looking for street racers and trying to quell takeovers. That Street Racing Task Force issued a total of 572 cites. However, 145 of those cites were issued in the city of Paramount. 89 of those were for modified exhaust, 6 were issued for street racing, and all the other citations were issued for traffic-related offenses, including but not limited to running stop signs, speeding, expired registration, and no front license plate. On average, the Street Racing Task Force issued 12 citations per night. It is our intention to keep up with both the SAO operation and with the Street Racing Task Force. It should be understood that the street racing and intersection takeovers are occurring in almost every Southern California city. We see it on the news, we read it in the paper, and we hear and read about it on Facebook and social media. Residents are tired of it. Residents lay in bed at night in their homes and can hear the modified exhaust, can hear the donuts occurring in the intersections. And rest assured to the residents of Paramount that the city is doing something about it. However, these operations and these takeovers are very hard to negotiate for law enforcement. But be rest assured that Paramount is doing something about it to deter this activity from our city. The second challenge that we faced, or we will be facing in the year 2021, is all of you, I'm sure, know that in December of last year, a new district attorney took office. Within 5 minutes of being sworn in, this new district attorney made sweeping changes to district attorney policy in the following areas. First, in pretrial release, also known as bail. The district attorney ordered that the presumption shall be to release all individuals pre-trial with very few exceptions. There shall be no request for cash bail for any misdemeanor, any non-serious felony, and any non-violent felony. If cash bail is requested, under certain circumstances, it must be aligned with the accused's ability to pay. The second change was to misdemeanor case management. And I apologize to council. Oh, thank you, Anthony. The second change to policy was made in misdemeanor case management. The district attorney has issued a directive that his deputies are not to file certain misdemeanor cases, including trespassing, disturbing the peace, driving without a license, criminal threats with various exceptions. Misdemeanor criminal threats can be filed, but with very limited exceptions. All narcotics possession, drinking in public, public intoxication, loitering, loitering to prostitute, and resisting arrest, also with very limited exceptions for filing. The third sweeping change was to sentencing enhancements. Now, I know that some of you probably have been following in the news the latest challenge made by the District Attorneys Association to the District Attorney's directive on the 3 strikes policy, which the judge ruled that the district attorney shall file all strikes in accordance with the 3 strikes law. However, that ruling was silent on the DA's new directives on great bodily injury enhancements, gun enhancements, gang enhancements, and out on bail enhancements, as well as narcotics enhancements. What does this mean? Is that when one person is charged with a crime, the district attorney's office will not be filing an enhancement which would increase the sentence of a defendant when they commit an offense that results in great bodily injury, or when an offense is committed with a gun. For instance, if someone committed a robbery with a gun, you could add additional time to the sentence for the use of a gun. Now, the most one can face on a robbery charge is 5 years in prison. Also, gang enhancements will not be filed. Gang enhancements include, it can be attached to any felony crime in which the crime is committed for the benefit of the gang, which would add additional time to a gang member's sentence. And the next sweeping change was many changes to juvenile crimes. The district attorney ordered in his new directives that there will be no case filings for any misdemeanors against persons under the age of 18. So no juvenile will face a filing for a misdemeanor crime. Also in juvenile crimes, the district attorney made changes and eliminated diversion programs for infractions. Now, how does this affect Paramount? In 2013, myself, along with the Sheriff's Department and the Probation Department, created an informal diversion program where all juveniles in the city of Paramount and beyond, but any juvenile cited while in the city of Paramount for any infraction and some misdemeanors, which included possession of drug paraphernalia and battery, infraction offenses such as truancy and the like, they were allowed to, without going through the court system, to come sign up in the Paramount's informal diversion program at the substation. They were given the opportunity to go and complete a program either with the 1020 Club in Downey, which provides counseling for anger management and drugs, or with the Short Stop program in the city of Long Beach, which was sort of a scared straight program at the Long Beach courthouse where they would attend with their parents. If they completed either program successfully, they would turn in a completion sheet and their citation would be dismissed. The new district attorney's policy completely eliminates this program. Also, the district attorney stated that no juvenile will be prosecuted as an adult for any crime. Next, there's a presumption against detention for offenses, and if a juvenile is to be detained, it will not exceed 15 days. Lastly, and most importantly, there are to be no probation conditions for juvenile crimes that include search and seizure conditions or gang conditions. This is a valuable tool that the law and the courts granted to the Sheriff's Department in combating crime and keeping an eye on those persons who have offended, been convicted, and been released back into society. Also, there were changes made to the death penalty and the district attorney's office approach. The district attorney's policy now is to not pursue the death penalty. Secondly, for those who have been convicted and sentenced to death, the district attorney's office will not be seeking execution dates on those sentenced already. Other policy changes were made to the Victim Services Bureau, the Conviction Integrity Unit, and the resentencing policy, which allows to redo sentences where the defendant's sentencing includes time for now abolished enhancements, such as the ones I previously spoke of. And that Sentences will be reviewed after 15 years. I don't bring those new changes up to frighten council or the residents in the city. I bring those changes up so that everyone is mindful of where we're going in 2021. I don't want our approach to be negative. I look forward to the changes and the growth and the pivot we're going to have to make to continue to keep Paramount safe. And that goal will only be accomplished by the continued partnership between the District Attorney's Office, Public Safety, the City of Paramount, and the Sheriff's Department. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm more than happy to take questions.
Well, thank you, Deputy District Attorney Patman, and thank you, Captain Springle. At this time, I'm going to open it up to questions from council members, if you have any.
I just have a comment, Councilmember Cuellar-Stalling. Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate both of you with this presentation. Thank you very much.
Mayor Lemons, this is Vice Mayor Olmos. This message is for Captain Springle. Again, thank you both for the presentation. It was a lot of great information. Captain Springle, I noticed that the LA County Sheriff's Department has a program. I saw it, I think, on a web page where you guys come out and you guys engrave it may be a serial number or a VIN number on catalytic converters. Do you know about that program?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, that's been done at some stations, and we are currently working at Lakewood Station to see if we can bring that online to accomplish it at Lakewood Station as well, with that information to come forward shortly, hopefully within the next month or so. So we are trying to set up dates and ensure we have the ability to do that, yes.
Oh, great. Thanks. That's good news. Thank you.
I just have one question, and it's in regards to what Olmos just stated. I also saw where there's a cage that they could place around, and I know some cities are helping with it. It's a cage they put around the catalytic converter. So not only do they engrave, but they put this cage around, which would take a person or a suspect longer to remove the cage to get to the catalytic converter. Is that something that the city and the Sheriff's Department are working on at this point, or something in the future that we could possibly look into?
Ma'am, from the Sheriff's Department point of view, I believe that is a private entity and investment with regard to the cage. The engraving part is the thing that the Sheriff's Department is currently looking at.
Thank you.
Councilmember, this is Adriana Lopez. Just
Yes.
to add what to the captain said, when we were having the third seat stolen from the SUVs, we did something similar to address the theft. So we can discuss that a little bit further. And then also I was talking to John Moreno about looking at the cage as a possible program that the city looks into as a crime prevention effort.
Thanks, Adriana.
Any other questions? Thank you both for the report. I myself found some of the items alarming and disappointing, and can see where your jobs are going to be that much harder. So thank you. Thank you for everything you do and all of your efforts to keep Paramount residents safe. With that, we'll move on to the next item, which is an amendment to the 2017 through 21 consolidated plan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. This next item is a public hearing, and as you mentioned, it is to amend the CDBG spending plan. That is the grants that we receive from the federal government via HUD. Over the last year, we received 2 allotments of CDBG funds for COVID response purposes, and namely, this came in the form of rental assistance and business assistance grants. We're going to be revising the plan to reflect the additional money we received, and this definitely requires this city council approval. So with that, I will turn it over to our finance director, Ms. Karina Liu, who will handle the item. Karina?
Thank you, John. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. The item before you is an amendment to the city's consolidated plan and action plan in response to CARES Act CDBG coronavirus funds. As you know, Paramount is an entitlement city to receive CDBG funds directly from HUD. In order to receive funding, every 5 years, a consolidated plan is prepared to list all the long-term goals and objectives. Every year, we also need to prepare an action plan to address specific goals for the year. As CDBG coronavirus funds become available, we have to amend the consolidated plan and action plan to incorporate the funding into the document. Next. To give you some background, back in March 2020, CARES Act was passed to provide funding to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19 pandemic. Next. Last May, we have been allocated $467,000 from Round 1 coronavirus funding, which the council has approved to use for several programs, including rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and small business assistance. Now, in recent months, Round 2 funding becomes available, and we've been allocated $468,000 additional funding. Similar to Round 1, we have to amend the consolidated plan and action plan in order to receive the money, and that's why we're doing that tonight. Next. With CDBG coronavirus Round 1 money, the resources were budgeted for rental assistance, mortgage assistance, and small business assistance grants in an effort to assist residents with financial constraints. At this time, because of additional Round 2 funding, we're able to add a new program, which is Homeless Assistance Program. We'll be working with Family Promise of South Bay to help targeted Paramount families who were identified by the Paramount Unified School District that they are currently homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. Assistance will provide motel vouchers, transitional housing, employment readiness, transportation, car repairs, and much more. So we believe this is a good program to mitigate homelessness in the community due to COVID-19. Next. Again, in order to use the funding, we have to amend the consolidated plan and action plan. We have to publish a notice for 5 days and conduct a public hearing, and that's what we're doing that tonight. Next. Last May, the council approved the use of funds listed on this table. At that time, we added regular CDBG funds to augment the funding to provide more resources for various programs. At this time, because CDBG coronavirus Round 2 funding becomes available, additional $468,000 is added to us. And so we now are putting back the $121,000 from our regular CDBG money. We're now putting it back to our regular program. So in the future, we'll be able to use that $121,000 for graffiti removal, residential rehab, and co-enforcement we have always used every year. Next. So you see here, without the regular CDBG, but with the added Round 2 coronavirus funds, we have a total of $935,000, and we're proposing to use $132,000 for rental program, $43,000 for mortgage assistance program, $417,000 for small business assistance, and then $155,000 for the homeless program, and then the rest will be for delivery costs and administration costs. In the past 7 months, significant outreach has been made to promote these assistance programs. For example, 1,000 flyers have been distributed, lots of advertising and social media posts have been done. However, we do come to realize that we are competing with many other CARES Act programs out there, including the county's rental program or business assistance program. Also, the state is rolling out a new rental program that will cover 80% of someone's rent this coming March. As for mortgage, a lot of mortgage companies are also offering mortgage relief programs as well. So residents do have many options as far as getting financial assistance. With that, based on current demand, we are reallocating the resources and are proposing to add a homeless program in the mix. Next. With that, it's recommended the council conducts a public hearing and authorize the city manager to make modifications to the programs as needed to comply with HUD regulations and submit the plan amendments to HUD. This wraps up my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Karina. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to give testimony in favor of this item?
No, ma'am.
Anyone in opposition?
None in opposition either.
Okay, open it up to questions from council members.
I have a quick question, Peggy.
Okay, Claire Stallings.
Karina, you said there's an increase on the homeless, and you mentioned several ways we can assist them, car repairs, and etc. Is there going to be a limit per family or a minimum that you'll be able to allow to assist them through the South Bay program?
Yeah, they have an estimate how much was spent per family. And so the $155,000 is actually allocated for 15 families, but the Paramount Unified School District identified 13 currently.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? There's no further questions. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved, almost.
Second, Claire Stallings.
Been moved by Vice Mayor Olmos, seconded by Claire Stallings, that we close the public hearing. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aguayo?
Yes.
Councilmember Guillen?
Yes.
Councilmember Claire Stallings?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Olmos?
Yes.
Mayor Lemons?
Yes. Now I'll entertain a motion on the item.
So moved, Claire Stallings.
Second, Aguayo. Been moved by Claire Stallings, seconded by Councilmember Aguayo, that we approve the proposed activities and authorize the city manager to make modifications to the programs as needed to comply with HUD regulations and submit the plan amendments to HUD. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aguayo?
Yes.
Councilmember Guillen?
Yes.
Councilmember Claire Stallings?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Olmos?
Yes.
Mayor Lemons?
Yes. Next, we have a receive and file report on the Vermont Avenue Traffic Calming Study update.
Yes, we do, Madam Mayor. We do have an update. Over the last several months, I've been informing you that we've been dealing with the traffic issues on Vermont Avenue south of Alondra that were brought to our attention by a resident. Well, the city engineer conducted a traffic calming study, and it is complete. The report includes some recommendations for some street improvements that we are reviewing with you tonight. And these improvements are actually part of the mid-year budget, which is the next item on the agenda. So if the council likes what they see and we want to move forward with it, that approval of that will be part of, once again, part of the mid-year budget. So with that, I'll turn it over to our city engineer, Mr. Rafael Casillas, who will walk you through the item. Mr. Casillas.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. What I'll be presenting on is on the results of the traffic study. Back in fall of 2020, the city of Paramount authorized the Vermont Avenue Traffic Calming Study. The traffic calming study required or collected data to analyze speeds, volumes, commuter traffic, and neighborhood land uses. As you can see on the exhibit, Vermont Avenue study, the length of it was from Alondra Boulevard to Jackson. Basically has two segments, with Monroe being in the middle, just about halfway point. The roadway characteristics of Vermont consists of two segments, approximately 650 feet in length, the street width of about 55 feet. Normally, residential streets are about 33 feet, so just to give you some idea that this roadway is quite a bit wider than your normal residential or smaller commuter streets. It provides one lane of travel in each direction for north-south. It's divided by a yellow dashed center line, and it has on-street parking on both sides. The mixed land use around the street provides access to multi-family residential, high-density residential, general commercial, light manufacturing, and heavy manufacturing. The prima facie speed limit is 25 miles an hour, and the average daily traffic on that street is up to 2,968 vehicles. And here we have a couple of pictures, one showing the southbound from Jackson to Monroe. You can see on the east side, there's high-density residential with manufacturing on the west side. And on the lower image, you'll see that there is high-density residential on the west side with multifamily residential. Those multifamily residential units have multiple homes on those properties. They're deeper lots. Now, when we go into compliance, and it was quite interesting to hear earlier today how the city has implemented various ordinances to handle street takeovers and speeding and you know, a variety of I guess drag racing and things of that nature. So that was good to hear, because this kind of leads right into this slide. When we do these traffic studies for compliance, we follow the California Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the California Vehicle Code, and the City of Paramount's guidelines for the installation of speed humps. So those are our compliance mechanisms that we use when we perform these studies. The findings that are required is, in order to have successful traffic calming compliance, we have to implement proper traffic control devices that must be enforceable by the California Vehicle Code. The methodology in performing the traffic engineering study requires an analysis of findings of vehicle speeds, traffic volumes, traffic collision history, roadway geometry, roadway classification, land use impacts, and emergency response times. And here are some of the results, a summary of what we collected. On Alondra, or the segment between Alondra and Monroe, the average daily traffic count is 2,968 vehicles, and the 85th percentile speed is 30 to 32 miles an hour. There was one collision back in 2017. It was a side swipe, vehicle entering the roadway. On Monroe, or on the segment between Monroe and Jackson, the average daily traffic count was 1,568. The 85th percentile speed was 33 to 34 miles per hour. And there was one traffic collision back in 2018, and it was a fixed object, unsafe speed. What that generally means is someone was driving too fast and they ran into the curb. Just to give some content as far as the data that was collected, so that everyone can understand how we collect these counts and speeds and collisions. Traffic counts are generally done one day out of the week, between Tuesday to Thursday. That's normal practice on traffic studies. It's a 24-hour count. For vehicle speeds, it's done on the peak hour. They count 100 vehicles to see what the average and the 85th percentile speed is. What we did on this traffic collision, or this traffic study, is we did a 24-hour count, and we collected over 1,500 vehicles on the segment between Monroe and Jackson, and then we collected over 2,900 vehicles for that same segment. So we went above and beyond the requirements. As far as the traffic collisions, we go ahead and utilize the state's traffic collision reporting database, and this is information based off a 5-year period. So the recommendation is to restripe the roadway, to add a 10-foot parking lane and 11-foot dual left turn lane down the center, and to create 2 travel lanes 12-foot wide. As you can see on the image to the left, that's the existing condition. And then on the image to the right is the proposed, where it shows the white edge line up against the parking lane. And then it has the through lane, and it'll have a center dual left turn lane. This will help reduce the roadway and lower traffic, or create a traffic calming situation at this roadway on Vermont. So the specific recommendations are to install 25 mile an hour speed limit signs, a radar enforcement sign, install 25 mile an hour pavement legend, install traffic calming ahead, a custom sign with the slow pavement legend, and then install radar feedback signs for both directions on Vermont Avenue at mid-block locations. And in addition to installing or implementing these, we recommend that we do a study prior to the installation and 6 months after, in order to get a baseline of how well this traffic calming measures are performing. So the recommendation for action, it's recommended that the City Council receive and file the Vermont Traffic Calming Study and approve funding for the implementation of the mitigation measures listed in the mid-year budget. And with that, Council, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that report. Are there questions on this item?
I have a question.
Councilmember Deanne.
Yes, thank you. My question is, I know that a couple of the residents had requested speed bumps, but instead, for whatever reason, it didn't fit the qualification, whatever the engineering issues are. And so I'd like to know how these stripes down the middle of the road actually will calm traffic. I understand what you're going to do, how you're going to increase the length of the parking along the east and west curb, but can you explain to me how by painting the stripes in the street that slows traffic or reduces traffic?
Sure. There's studies that show that in narrower roadways or lanes, the vehicle speeds reduce. And if you kind of think about it, like when you're driving up to a narrow roadway in a rural area, when it's real narrow or you go over a narrow bridge, you slow down because the visual aspect of it creates that image to help you to reduce your speed. So there's studies to help support that. Now, in addition to that, it's also the installation of the additional signing. And as you can see, like earlier, by having a study in place now, they will be able to cite and enforce vehicles that are speeding in these locations, along with the ordinances that have been passed earlier.
Okay, great. And so my question is, I'm glad to see that there will be a follow-up study within 6 months, because one of the concerns I have, where I've seen this in the past, where when you have a section painted off as an imaginary medium, a lot of times you have big trucks that will start idling in these mediums, thinking that it's like a staging area before they get to a location. And I just want to make sure that if that is the case, where now we have trucks, because it happens on Jefferson and there's not even yellow striped medium, but they have an imaginary medium on a white street where they do this. And so will that be addressed at the end of the 6 month study if in fact vehicles are using this as an idling position?
That's a valid point. The vehicle code already has restrictions on parking further than 18 inches from the curb line. So any vehicle, whether commercial or passenger, can be cited.
Right, but you know, we are, I understand the vehicle code section, but I want to know if after the study that will be addressed, because the patrol police officers can't be everywhere. So, you know, and a lot of times when you call regarding an issue such as that, you're not going to get a response right away. So meanwhile, you could have a truck idling there for 15 minutes. I mean, I see it every day in other areas. I just want to make sure that after the study that we look at that. And I understand that, you know, they could be cited for it. Whether that happens or not is another issue. But I just want to make sure that after the study is conducted after 6 months, that if this is presenting a problem, that we'll look at another solution.
Councilmember Guillen, this is Adriana Lopez. We'll definitely be looking at the improvements that are being made, the proposed changes that are being made, and make a note of that if we see anybody parking or idling. I know exactly what you're talking about. It happens on Garfield, and that's where we put those linear dividers so that wouldn't occur. We would cite all the time, and the vehicles would still park. And I know exactly what you're talking on Jefferson. We have contacted the businesses as well, because they're obviously allowing the trucks and the deliveries to idle there. So definitely we'll be looking at that and making sure that Public Works gets all that information.
Great, Adriana. I appreciate, you know, the extra attention to that area, but my concern is that it'll just become an ongoing problem. And so I just want to make sure that if it is a problem, that we could look at maybe not the invisible medium, but perhaps putting an actual medium or bumps or the dots, something other than just these two stripes if it presents a problem. But I appreciate the extra effort as far as, directed patrol in that area. But as you're well aware, when somebody gets busy and they're tied up, that's not always going to happen. That's why we have problems in other areas. So I just want to make sure on the follow-up that we address that potential issue.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this item? If there aren't, we will accept it as a receive and file item and move on to item 6, resolution number 21004.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, this is the mid-year budget review. In a typical year, the mid-year budget review is a standard review of minor adjustments made to our fiscal spending plan. And that's because not much really changes from the approved budget. However, as we know, this fiscal year is not typical. Aside from the pandemic, there was uncertainty about the amount of revenue that the new sales tax measure would bring in. The additional sales tax has actually resulted in excess funds, which will help us to replenish our reserve funds, make some essential purchases, add to existing projects resulting in better costs, and also unfreeze a couple of key positions that were temporarily frozen at the approved budget. We will have a presentation you'll see that is very similar to the budget presentation. So Karina will kick it off, and then a few of the department heads will highlight some of the changes in their respective areas. But again, we'll start with our finance director, Ms. Karina Lulu, who will start us off.
Thank you,
Karina?
John. Madam Mayor and members of the council, the item before you is the mid-year budget adoption for fiscal year 2021. Now, more than 6 months have gone by since the budget was adopted in June. We did typically do a 6-month review to see where we are today compared to 6 months ago. As John mentioned, this is a very different year, and due to the pandemic, we did have a preliminary review in October, and we find that the numbers now are consistent with what was reviewed back then. We are now focusing an increase in some areas, which we'll go over in a side presentation. Next. Just to give you some background, this budget was prepared and totally adopted in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. Not knowing how the pandemic would impact us, we used a conservative approach then and presented a balanced budget while maintaining all essential services. In this fiscal year, we're having a new resource, in fact, a few new resources, including a COVID-19 reserve that was set aside from last fiscal year for operational needs. Also, a new revenue source transaction tax that was approved by voters back in March through Measure Y. And of course, we got CARES Act federal resources for COVID-19 mitigation. Next. Now, we have done a lot in terms of COVID-19 mitigations. As of today, we have spent over $1.44 million, including the use of general funds, CARES Act from the state, and CARES Act funding from HUD, so-called the CDBG coronavirus funding, which you just heard about in item number 4. As we see revenues are doing better than expected, especially with new Measure Y revenues, we are now proposing to use our COVID-19 reserve resources to augment the programs funded by CARES Act, CDBG Coronavirus Fund. This is above and beyond the CARES Act money we received from the Fed. The COVID-19 reserve was set aside for operations this year due to the uncertainty of the pandemic that may pose on our finances. However, at this point, we're proposing to use it to benefit the community. The proposal includes a $100,000 rental assistance, $120,000 for small business assistance program, and $50,000 to fund 10 nonprofit organizations. Once again, this is above and beyond the federal funding that has been provided to us. Next. In addition to our own COVID-19 reserve, here are other major programs that were funded by CARES Act and CDBG coronavirus funding. Once again, includes rental assistance program, mortgage assistance program, small business assistance program, homeless assistance program, and distance learning. Next. So what other programs have we done other than those few major programs? Just to give you a few, we have suspended water shutoff and penalties in the year. Alfresco was set up for dining and personal care businesses. We are also at this time proposing a business license deferment for businesses that are going through financial hardship, and we will bring you more detail about how we roll this out. We are also exploring a partnership opportunity with the county to do a vaccine site at Paramount Park. Now, if this comes to fruition, we may use COVID-19 reserve to help pay for some of our costs. We also have done community mass distribution, food distribution, and modify the senior programs to cater to their needs. Next. In addition, many social media posting and e-blast newsletters have been sent to residents during the pandemic. Roadside message boards are set up for COVID-19 messages. Many health and safety improvements have been made at our facilities. And for our own employees who are essential disaster workers, COVID-19 accommodations were made to keep the organization running smoothly during the pandemic. Next, we'll have our financial review. Next. Consistent with the proposed budget, we're proposing a balanced budget at this time with an estimated surplus at $98,000. In addition, thanks to Measure Y, we're able to replenish and preserve reserves such as capital improvement project reserve, pension reserve, and equipment replacement fund. We're also formalizing the funding that was put aside from last year's closing to continue paying down the unfunded liabilities that we do every year. Next. This is a snapshot of our three fund categories citywide. First, for general fund, with the transfer of funds to other reserves, including capital improvement projects, pension, and equipment replacement fund, the surplus is estimated at $98,000. For restricted funds, this is really just for restricted use only. We can use it for any project we like. Due to the nature of the fund, we typically accumulate funds from prior years and use it for eligible projects at a later date. So what you see here, this deficit of $1 million is just a timing difference, and you typically see that from year to year. As for water fund, this is a different story. We have been seeing structural deficits for quite some time. This year, out of abundance of caution, we have shut down a well, and therefore the production cost has increased dramatically, and we're posting a huge deficit. We do have a reserve to cover this temporary, and Adriana Figueroa, the Public Works Director, will go through this with more detail later on. Next. Here is a history of city revenues for the past 10 years. The blue bar represents the general fund, and the red represents the restricted fund. In the current year, the increase in blue bar, the general fund, is related to Measure Y. The huge increase in restricted funds was related to a few one-time grants, including one grant for a bypass design and another grant for the design of the Alondra Boulevard widening project. Hence, overall, the total revenues are budgeted at about $60.7 million. Next. Earlier, you see the blue bar representing the general fund. Here's the breakdown of the general fund in three categories. Of course, the number one revenue source in the general fund is sales tax, which is in red here, total about $8.5 million. A new revenue source in green here is the Measure Y. We're budgeting about $4.5 million in green. And the rest of the general fund totaling about $18.7 million in blue, including motor vehicle license fees, about $7.3 million. Next. Specifically, this is the total for sales tax we have for the year, as well as the trend for the past 10 years. Original sales tax is pretty much remains flat, about $8.5 million, but with the influx of new revenues, $4.5 million, this is undoubtedly a saving grace in the current fiscal year. Especially, we're in the middle of the pandemic, and we see significant decreases in certain general fund revenues, such as permits, citations, and licenses. Next. The second largest source of revenue in general fund is motor vehicle license fees, MVLF. This is a trend for the past 10 years. While we thought we had plateaued this past year, we're once again seeing an increase, and we're very happy about that. Next. On the other hand, utility users tax has been decreasing since Measure P was passed in fiscal year 16. Next. Now, we usually compare budget estimates to see if we're still on track now compared to proposed budget. So the next couple of slides will give you a feel of where we are on the revenues and expenditures. On the revenue side, we are increasing sales tax estimates, MVLF, and other categories. Also in the restricted funds, because of one-time grants we're receiving, we're also adding it to about $21.5 million. For water fund, we are budgeting about the same. Next. As for expenditures, now that we have a better handle on the revenues, things that we put aside, such as maintenance and repairs, are now added back, along with some added programs that department are proposing. With that, we are budgeting approximately $30 million in general fund, $24 million in restricted funds, and $17 million in water fund. The increase in water fund, once again, related to the closure of a well, which we'll go over a bit later. Next. Next, we'll give you some budget highlights, and a few department heads will give you the presentation and give you the detail of it. And first, we have Andrew Valpondo, the Assistant City Manager, that will go over the Human Resources side.
Thank you, Karina, and thank you, Karina. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Can I get the next slide, please? The following items are mid-year budget adjustments for human resources. As you'll see, all of these requests are directly related to adverse impacts caused by COVID-19. So our first adjustment that we are proposing is unfreezing 2 positions. One position is the Code Enforcement Officer position in Public Safety, and the other is one Recreation Specialist position in Community Services and Recreation. And just a little bit of background on each of these positions. For the Code Enforcement Officer, this was a budgeted position, meaning that it was a position that never went away. It was always there, but it was vacant due to a promotion in the position before COVID. Because of all the uncertainty of operations at the onset of COVID, we froze all positions that were vacant, that were not filled. This was in the adopted budget that you approved last July. The reason why we did this is we just wanted to get our our bearings on what our fiscal position was, as well as what our operational needs were going to be during COVID. So this position has been vacant for over a year, and again, it was frozen at the adoption of the fiscal 21 budget. And just a little bit of insight of how the Code Enforcement Division and how they're impacted from this vacancy. And the short answer is they've been extremely impacted adversely. In addition to the 50 or so active and new cases they manage each month, they make a multitude of contacts with residents every single day. Code enforcement officers, they handle things from residential and commercial inspections, follow-up abatement and related administrative correspondence, and they also enforce things, codes all around the city, things like unpermitted yard sales, signs, and vendors. Over the last year, the City Council has adopted several ordinances that are certainly going to impact the activity of the Code Enforcement Division. Some of these additional duties that will increase have to do with passage of new ordinances, such as the park rules and regulations, a new ordinance on mobile food vendors, as well as new ordinances on parking lot sweeping regulations. As for the recreation specialist, it's a similar situation. This was a budgeted position, but it was vacant due to a retirement that occurred before COVID. During COVID, we froze the position, again, just with the uncertainty of our operational and fiscal needs. This vacancy resulted in work being displaced across all staff and managers in the department, and naturally this adversely impacts the operations of the department. So at this time, because these positions were frozen as part of action taken by the City Council at the budget adoption, we're requesting that these positions be unfrozen for this mid-year budget. The second item we're proposing is implementation of a temporary vacation buyback program. So a little bit of history here. In immediate response to the COVID-19 travel restrictions that were imposed by the state and county health orders last year, the city instituted a no vacation policy for several months for all employees. As you know, we are all here in City of Paramount and other public officials. We are mandated state disaster service workers during emergency proclamations. As such, city employees were expected to carry out essential duties and services for the community during COVID. By the summer of last year, we pulled back a little bit on our no vacation rule, but even so, employees were still unable to take time off because of state and national travel restrictions. The city's policy limits employees to a maximum accrual cap of 240 vacation hours. It's very rare that an employee hits this cap, but once they do, and if they do, they just stop accruing hours, effectively losing hours. Last June, you approved a temporary measure that allowed employees to accrue vacation beyond 240 hours, but that was just a temporary fix with the hope that COVID would regress a little bit, enough for employees to take their leave. Though at the time, those extra hours were not eligible to be cashed out, and the program ended on December 31st. Any hours that were left over beyond the 31st were essentially lost. So currently we have about 30 employees at the 240 hours cap or approaching it. That accounts for about 30% of our full-time workforce. As vacation time is considered a form of benefits in lieu of wages that employees are provided as part of their employment with the city, as well as coupled with the different travel restrictions that have caused many employees to lose accrued hours over the last year, we are proposing this temporary vacation buyback program. A vacation buyback program allows an employee to sell his or her unused vacation time back to the city. This is a common practice in many organizations, and it allows employees to collect due wages from unused vacation days. This is an industry standard. We surveyed 12 cities in our area, and 10 offer a buyback program just like the one I'm describing now. In traditional circumstances, meaning non-COVID, it ordinarily would benefit the organization to have a program like this, since the employee will be able to provide more of his or her services, which theoretically increases our output and production in the long run. But in this case, we are buying back unused accrued vacation that employees built up from the output and production we required of them as disaster service workers during COVID. This temporary measure would be available only for this fiscal year, so meaning it would expire on June 30th. The program would allow employees to buy back up to 14 hours only once. They must have at least 180 hours to be eligible and must possess 180 hours in their accrual bank after they buy back. Anyone less than 180 hours would be ineligible. So for example, if we had an employee with 200 hours, they would have the opportunity to buy back up to 20 hours. And of course, anyone below 180 hours would be ineligible. The third item here on this list that we are proposing is we did earmark about $20,000 for COVID-19 rapid testing for essential workers. Since June of 2020, Human Resources has ordered about or nearly 200 tests have been administered since last June of 2020. And lastly, this is an item that I believe we reported to you earlier in the fiscal year, something that was unanticipated and it's definitely caught us by surprise, but here we are planning for it, is the amount of we just received an unprecedented amount of unemployment insurance claims resulting from COVID. Just to give you an idea, a typical year for us is where we might have between 5 to 10 people filing a claim of unemployment, which might be about $100 to about $5,000 a quarter. In this last quarter, we have 55 active claimants which have filed for unemployment, which the city has been named the employer responsible. And we estimate that this would probably be about $143,700 for the year if all the claims go through. So with that concludes my part of the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions at the conclusion of the entirety of the presentation. And next up is Community Services and Recreation Director Dave Johnson.
Before we kick it over to Dave, Andrew, thank you. Just want to point of clarification, Mayor and Council. When Andrew did mention the vacation buyback option, I just want to make it clear that the number of hours that is proposed is a maximum of 40. That's 40, not 1414. So just point of clarity there. Thank you. All right, Dave.
Thank you, John. Mayor and council members. So we're presenting a portion here about youth leagues because it's a bit of a product of our program partner agreement, our effort to reduce the direct subsidies we gave to the youth leagues, and then obviously due to the COVID closures. Next slide. Next. Put it up. So what we have here is in fiscal year 20. That was their last year of eligibility to receive their full potential of $10,000 of a direct subsidy. Because the leagues were shut down due to COVID, that obviously did not occur, and so they were not able to acquire any of those funds. So you'll see in the FY20 actuals, that's why it's zeroed out. Next slide. Oh, there's my problem. All right, in fiscal year 21, they were eligible in that year for half of that amount, for $5,000 subsidy. We did move the funding that was lost from FY20 into that total allocation, so that's why you see in FY21 they were eligible for a total of $15,000. We are looking at FY21. The leagues are obviously anxious to return to play under our current awareness of what the county and state will allow. We are very much unsure if spring sports will be able to operate at all this year under a competitive process in which they would then not be able to acquire these funds again. So our recommendation for fiscal year 21, you'll see that there's a total of $45,000 of indirect league funding. What we're recommending is that we reserve $5,000 for each of those three leagues, $15,000 total, for any possible spring operation that may occur this year. Also with the possibility that maybe they are able to operate a recreation league in the fall in lieu of the spring, given whatever COVID conditions might exist. We would also recommend that if league play does not occur in FY21, that $5,000 would be carryover for those leagues into FY22. Now the balance of $30,000, we are recommending for capital purchases, not for just the three leagues, but the four leagues. That would include West Coast Rebels, that is not currently receiving a direct subsidy whatsoever. What we're recommending in terms of capital allocation would be, we would sit down with each league to find out what their capital wish list would be, what those costs are associated with those. But we would recommend that these purchases not or be limited to long-term equipment use, the big pricey items that they can't normally afford themselves, but not expendable equipment, not uniforms, not balls of that nature. So we're looking for equipment that they have that is in disrepair or missing altogether. And examples of this would be field groomers, pitching machines, line markers, storage units, the bins in which they put their equipment. Those are in disrepair. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions at the conclusion of this presentation. And I'll hand it over now to our Public Works Director, Adriana Figueroa.
Thank you, Dave. Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, I'll go through the water utility slides. So here are some of the challenges that we have experienced this year, beginning with emergency repairs that were of mechanical nature, mechanical repairs that were needed for well 15 that basically took the well offline for over 2 months. Once repairs were completed, the Drinking Water Division of the state reviewed all documentation and testing results and approved the return of the well into daily operations, which just took place last week. As indicated previously, PFAS was detected at well 14 last year, and we began quarterly testing to collect necessary data. The city opted for shutting down production at that well last February out of an abundance of caution only, and we are currently analyzing potential treatment options, and we'll be coming back to you soon to present that in more detail. As a reminder, no MCL, which is the maximum contaminant levels, have yet been established for this particular compound. The establishment of MCLs requires extensive data collection and analysis, particularly human health risk assessments, which generally take approximately 3 years to complete. In the absence of MCLs, some compounds are placed on a notification list and response level type of requirements, as was the case for PFAS. Just as a reminder, even with the low detection levels at well 14 averaging around 6.9 to 7.9 parts per trillion, our water continues to meet state and federal drinking water quality standards. We have also seen some impacts as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic in terms of increased water consumption, given that some people are staying home more and, of course, students are attending their respective institutions remotely. So all of these three challenges that I have expressed just now have all led to a higher demand, and that demand has been met with importer water. But as you know, importer water is more expensive than groundwater production. I'm trying to click. Uh-oh, I don't think it's working. Oh, there we go. I just, again, wanted to reiterate this for you, that our water system, although we're having all these challenges, our water quality in Paramount continues to meet the state and federal drinking water quality standards. And I'll go into the next slide. These have been some of the challenges. We have been running a deficit for our water system, and we have been absorbing a structural deficit for a few years now, and it's certainly not sustainable. We have one of the lowest water rates in the region, and this is good, this is great, but it also puts a strain on our water fund. And that strain is because we continue to see an increase in production costs. We continue to see routine and long-term maintenance that is required of a water system. We also are required to conduct state testing and treatment requirements, which of course go up in price every year. We also have to take into account our future infrastructure improvement needs of the entire system and the debt service ratio for existing loans and potential future bonding opportunities. So with that, I'll turn it over to our finance director for the rest of the presentation, but I'll be able to answer any questions you may have at the conclusion.
Thank you, Adriana. I will continue the presentation with Water Funds Financial. As Adriana mentioned, we've been posting deficits for quite some time, even under normal circumstances. So this year, out of abundance of caution, we closed one well that really increased our production costs as we have to purchase a lot more potable water. The increase in production costs, just that alone, the increase is $1.6 million in the year. So with that, we're posing a huge deficit, about $2.9 million. We have sufficient reserve to cover this at this time, but we do need to address the financial situation as we are not able to meet the debt service ratio as required by IBank, where we got the loans for our new well construction. We do hope that the water rate study will soon wrap up and that it will address the financial shortfall and then also able to mitigate any sharp increases for some of our account holders. Next. Next, we'll go through some highlights of the budget, many new items being proposed at this time, at mid-year time. Of course, if you want more details, you can always refer to the budget document itself or the agenda reports in your binder. But here are some highlights of the additions. Of course, first and foremost, we're adding rental mortgage small business assistance program. We have implemented al fresco, outdoor dining in the community. We are also proposing a business license fee deferment at this time to help businesses that are experiencing financial hardship during the pandemic. And again, we'll come back to you with more details. We also have done distance learning. We are funding an employee compensation study. And as we allow a customer to come in and make credit card payments at City Hall, we just purchased some credit card terminals as well. Our planning department is adding professional services and add an economic development study in the year. Public Safety is proposing to repurpose the funding for Paramount Unified School District's Resource Officer to Special Events Services. Also, their lieutenant position was not able to fill in the beginning of the year. Therefore, a sergeant position was filled temporary at the time. But now we were told by the Sheriff Department that they're able to fill that lieutenant position once again, and so we have included funding for that lieutenant position. Next, in our public safety, we are also purchasing a mobile digital computer for a CSO vehicle. Also using a grant fund along with general fund, we'll be purchasing an automated license plate recognition trailer. In our community services and recreation department, they have been on the forefront in mitigating COVID-19 at this time. So we're adding funding for supplies that they need, for what they do for the community, such as hot meals and food distribution, etc. We're also adding funding for Paramount Pool emergency repairs, adding roadside message boards, and also doing additional sidewalk repairs. Next. We mentioned about extra payment we are planning to make for unfunded liabilities. Here we're adding $527,000 using restricted funds. This is the money that's been earmarked from last year's closing, so this extra payment has no impact to the general fund, but we do want to point it out. Other than that, there are a few new items proposing using restricted funds. One is a truck replacement using AQMD, and also the housing element update using general plan and LEAP grants. Also using the LEAP grant, we'll be adding a climate action plan and the distance learning using STAR and the CARES Act money. Next. Here are the programs we have discussed using CDBG coronavirus funds, including rental, mortgage, business assistance, and homeless assistance programs. Next. After reviewing the operations, we are now switching to look at some physical improvements in the city. Next. The list here only shows the addition we're proposing at this time, including maintenance and repairs or projects that we put aside in the beginning of the year. That includes a drought-tolerant median conversion, Deals Park's improvement, we're building a mini peach court, and also adding informational sign at Deals Park. We're replacing the fence at Fanny Park, also doing exterior maintenance and security enhancement at City Hall. Next. We're also adding, because of the new grants we are receiving, we're adding a design for the Alondra Boulevard widening project. We're adding a sculpture at Civic Center, and also Vermont Street improvement, you just heard from the city engineer. Next. In addition to the ongoing new well construction, the department is adding a new project in the water fund. That is a variable frequency drive that it will be installed at well 15. This VFD, it will be there to maintain water pressure to prolong the lifestyle motor. Next. So when it's all said and done, by the end of June 30, we anticipated an increase in the general fund by about $100,000 to a total of close to $13 million. Restricted funds will maintain at about $12.3 million, and water fund at $1.7 million. Next. That wraps up my report. It's recommending that City Council read by title only and adopt Resolution 21004, approving the fiscal year 21 mid-year budget, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Karina. Questions from council? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Councilmember Quer-Stallings moves the item to read by title only and adopt Resolution 21004.
Councilmember Aguayo, I second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Quer-Stallings and a second by Councilmember Aguayo. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aguayo?
Yes.
Councilmember Guillen?
Yes.
Councilmember Quer-Stallings?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Olmos?
Yes.
Mayor Lemons?
Yes. We will move on to the receive and file item on inclusionary housing.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Back in October, when the City Council approved the new proposed single-family housing development on Alondra next to the Home Depot, the council directed staff to come back with a more comprehensive report on what is called inclusionary housing. As you'll hear, inclusionary housing is one option of many that a city can use to increase their affordable housing stock. I want to emphasize that it's not the only tool. In fact, over the past several years, the city has been able to create affordable housing throughout town. The idea is that any new housing development that is proposed, the developer must set aside a certain percentage of affordable units. That's how inclusionary housing works. Now, this will be our first in-depth look at this topic. Tonight, we're not asking for direction on whether or not the council wants an ordinance to be drafted. If the council is interested in going down this road, what we're recommending is, in a sense, taking baby steps. The first would be a feasibility study that would be done. So as you'll hear, the study would be very, very comprehensive, and it would follow any direction that the council would want to take on this. So with that, I'll turn it over to our planning director, Mr. John Carver, who will handle the item. John?
Thank you, John. Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item is a report on inclusionary housing. At its October 2020 meeting, the City Council reviewed an oral presentation on inclusionary housing and requested additional information. Inclusionary housing is used in hundreds of communities across the nation to provide affordable housing. Inclusionary housing is a land use tool that can aid in the production of affordable housing. Inclusionary housing is permissible under the police power that is granted to cities by the state. Inclusionary housing is flexible and can be tailored to meet local circumstances. There are more than 170 cities in the state that have inclusionary housing ordinances, and within the Gateway Cities region, Long Beach and Southgate both have ordinances. Input from the community and stakeholders should be given when preparing this type of ordinance. The vast majority of ordinances set the number of affordable units as a percentage of the units in a new development. Percentages range from between 10 and 20%, with 15% the most common requirement. The length of time that a unit must remain affordable is typically 55 years for a rental unit and 45 years for a for-sale unit. Inclusionary housing ordinances usually apply to new developments with 10 or more rental or for-sale units. The need for inclusionary housing is tied to providing area to build units for all income categories. This planning is usually done through the housing element and the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA. The next 8-year RHNA cycle begins in October 2021, and the city has been assigned a number of 362 units. 91 of those units are for very low income households, 43 units are for low income households, 48 units are for moderate income households, and then 180 units are for above moderate income households. Prior to elimination, Paramount would provide affordable housing through the redevelopment agency. Beginning in the mid-1980s and lasting until the end of redevelopment in 2020, the city aided in the construction of close to 200 affordable units. These units included both rental units and for-sale units. However, with the loss of redevelopment, cities have had to find alternative ways to provide affordable housing, and an inclusionary housing ordinance is one of those ways. An inclusionary housing ordinance needs to have findings that demonstrate the need for such an ordinance. The need to address the shortage of affordable housing is a very strong basis for an inclusionary housing ordinance. An inclusionary ordinance should define how many affordable units are needed and at what income levels. An ordinance could require 15% of a project to be affordable, with a further breakdown of 10% for low income and 5% for very low income. Specific percentages are dependent on local housing needs. Inclusionary ordinances typically apply to rental units and for sale units. This provides equity across different types of housing projects. Incentives are also a part of inclusionary housing and can include density increases, waiver of development standards, expedited permit approval, waiver or reduction of development fees, and direct financial subsidies. Another key to a successful ordinance is to establish clear development standards, and that can include affordable units must be indistinguishable from market rate units. Affordable and market rate units must have the same percentages of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Affordable units should be spread throughout a project, and residents of affordable units must have access to amenities such as a pool. California law requires that there be established alternatives to compliance with an affordable housing ordinance. A common alternative is an in lieu fee, where a developer pays a fee to a city instead of constructing affordable units. That fee would go into a city's affordable housing fund for later expenditure on affordable units. Another alternative is to construct off-site affordable units, as long as those units are not clustered in a single neighborhood. As John mentioned, a feasibility study is extremely important, and it should be done before adopting an inclusionary housing ordinance. A feasibility study will analyze local market conditions, affordability percentages, levels of affordability, and incentives to produce affordable units. A feasibility study can demonstrate that a developer will earn a profit producing affordable housing, and will show if RHNA numbers will be enhanced or inhibited by an ordinance. A well-designed ordinance can provide more choices for low-income households, help to meet RHNA numbers, ensure affordable housing is distributed evenly across the community, and ensure that lower-income residents can stay in a community. And it is recommended that the City Council provide direction on inclusionary housing and receive and file this report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions from council? If not, we accept and receive and file the inclusionary housing report. We're going to move to item 8, award of contract.
Okay, yes, Mayor and Council, we're bringing back the approval of the art piece after that commemorates the 100th anniversary of the women's suffrage movement, and I will turn it back over to John Carver, our planning director. John?
Thank you, John. Madam Mayor and council members. This item is an award of contract for professional services with JK Designs for an art piece at the Civic Center. Over the years, the city has purchased numerous pieces of art from JK Designs. The art piece will celebrate the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which gave women the right to vote in 1920. The art piece will also commemorate the all-female Paramount City Council. This item was originally presented to the council at its November 17th, 2020 meeting. The style and look of the piece was to be a surprise. However, the council preferred to see pictures of the art piece, which you were provided. The art piece has a cost of $90,000, which is similar to recently purchased art pieces, such as the one at the Clearwater Crossing project, which had a cost of $130,000. Funding for the art piece will come from the city's Art Public Places Fund. Money for this fund is collected from large-scale development projects that have a valuation over $100,000. The art piece would be located to the east of the Veterans Memorial at the Civic Center. The piece will be a bronze replica of the suffragist ratification flag that hung from the balcony of the National Women's Party headquarters in Washington, D.C. One side of the art piece will contain the text of the 19th Amendment, while the other side will contain a commemoration of that amendment and the all-female Paramount City Council. The piece will also contain 36 stars, symbolizing the number of states needed to pass the 19th Amendment, and a quote from Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was the chief philosopher for the suffragist movement. The art piece will measure 12 feet in height and 4 feet in width. This photo shows the suffragist flag hanging from the balcony of the National Women's Party headquarters in Washington, D.C. Here's a simulation of what the bronze art piece would look like. Under the city's purchasing policy, contracts over $40,000 require city council approval. Contracts are to be awarded based on the demonstrated competence of the contractor and not solely on cost. As mentioned earlier, the city has purchased numerous pieces of art from JK Designs, and we are very confident in the quality of their work. And it's recommended that the City Council award the contract to JK Designs for a Civic Center art piece in an amount not to exceed $90,000, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Questions at this time?
I have a question, Peggy. Councilmember Cueto, Scotland.
Go right ahead.
I have a question, Mr. Carver. How's this statue delivered? I mean, I've seen that the Jane D. Decker is in Loveland, Colorado. Is it shipped over to Paramount?
Yes, it's shipped by JK Designs to Paramount.
From Colorado?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
We
Can I have a motion on the award of contract, please?
This is Councilmember Aguayo. I move to approve the item.
Councilmember Gann, I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Aguayo, second by Councilmember again, that we award the contract for professional services to JK Designs for an art piece at the Civic Center using the city's public art fund in the amount of $90,000 and authorize the mayor or her designee to execute the agreement pending final review of the agreement by the city attorney. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aguayo,
Yes.
Councilmember Guillen,
Yes.
Councilmember Quer Stallings,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Olmos,
Yes.
Mayor Lemons.
Yes. Next, we have an award of contract, building and safety plan check, and building official services.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, after almost 35 years with us, our contracted building official who handles our plan check services is retiring. We went out to bid for this professional service, and we're recommending a very reputable firm that performs this service for many other cities in Southern California. And so I will now turn it back over to our planning director, Mr. John Carver, who will handle this item. John?
Thank you, John. Madam Mayor and council members. This item is an award of contract for plan check and building official services. Our current consultant is Certified Inspections and Code Consultants, and they have served the city for almost 35 years. The business owner, Howard Larnard, who's in the picture there, is winding down his business as he retires. Plan check services include examining construction plans, making sure plans meet all relevant code requirements, and making sure that buildings will be structurally safe. The building official administers and enforces the building code. We sent out a request for proposal on October 9th, 2020, with a deadline to submit by November 20th. We received proposals from 6 qualified firms and interviewed 4 firms. All of the 4 firms that we interviewed were very competitive. The things we looked for in a consultant include a quick plan check turnaround period, a competitive cost, personalized interaction with the city and building permit applicants, and a comfortable fit between the Building and Safety Department and the consultant. Based on the proposal and interview, we selected Scott Fazekas and Associates, SFA. SFA was founded by Scott Fazekas in 1996 and is located in Irvine. SFA provides services only to municipal building and safety departments. SFA maintains top quality engineers specifically trained and experienced in building plan check. SFA has 6 plan check staff who are either a licensed structural engineer or a civil engineer. SFA provides plan check services to 17 Southern California cities, and Scott Fazekas is the building official in 2 of those cities. And if approved tonight, he would be the building official here in Paramount also. SFA has a plan check turnaround time of 10 business days, which is the same as our current consultant, and there is a 5-day turnaround time for rechecks. SFA charges 65% of the city's plan check fee schedule. SFA has experience in small and large projects, such as the Amazon Fulfillment Center in Beaumont, for which SFA did the plan check. Our current budget for plan check and building official services is $165,000, and that was approved in the FY 2021 budget. We estimate that we will need a budget of $150,000 for SFA. If approved, SFA's start date would be February 17th, and the city attorney has reviewed and approved this contract. And with that, it's recommended that the city council award the contract for plan check and building official services to Scott Fazekas and Associates, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Questions on the item? I do have one, John. I heard you mention in the report that you did have in the request for proposals the turnaround time, and I know that that's something that's really admired in our city from people who are doing construction. So did you set the same standard that we've been getting from the past plan check person? Are we going to be able to expect the same thing, or was there any kind of time frame carved out?
Yes, it would be a 10-day turnaround period, and that is specified in the contract, and that would be for the initial submittal, and then a 5-day turnaround for rechecks, and that is the same time period that we have currently with our current consultant.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion on the item.
So moved, Olmo.
Second, Aguayo.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Mayor Olmos, seconded by Councilmember Aguayo, that we award the contract for building and safety plan check and building official services to Scott Fazekas and Associates Incorporated. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aguayo,
Yes.
Councilmember Guillen,
Yes.
Councilmember Quer Stallings,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Olmos,
Yes.
Mayor Lemons.
Yes. Next, we have approval for the renewal of the facilities use agreement with PUSD.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Our Community Services and Recreation Director, Mr. David Johnson, will handle this item. David?
Thank you, John. Mayor and council members, this is a ministerial item to review and approve a new 5-year term of the joint use agreement the city has with Paramount Unified School District. This is officially known as the Facilities Use Agreement. Starting back in 2010, the city and PUSD entered into a formal comprehensive joint use agreement that identifies facilities that we share or have a joint use and establish conditions for that use. The current 5-year agreement expired on January 28th, 2021. The current proposed 5-year agreement is the same as the previous 5-year agreement, except for the removal of the reference to the former GRIP program, which PUSD absorbed into their social and emotional learning program. The Paramount Unified School District Board of Education approved the agreement at their last board meeting, or at their board meeting last week. The term of the agreement remains 5 years, and if approved tonight, will expire in 2026. We are requesting approval of the renewed facilities use agreement with the Paramount Unified School District. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Questions? May I have a motion on the agreement?
So moved, Councilmember Quer Stallings.
Guillen, second.
Okay, it's been moved by Claire Stallings, seconded by Councilmember Gann, that we approve the renewed facilities use agreement with the Paramount Unified School District and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Aguayo,
Yes.
Councilmember Guillen,
Yes.
Councilmember Quer Stallings,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Olmos,
Yes.
Mayor Lemons.
Yes. Next, we have a receive and file item for the update on the calendar year 2021 special events.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, as we've all heard, COVID has definitely thrown us for a curveball at times, a pivot, whatever sports analogy you want to use. And that especially holds true for the many special events that our community is used to. So what we'd like to do is just kind of update you on what we are planning with our crystal ball here for the upcoming special events for the rest of the calendar year. So all of this is subject to change. So with that, I'll turn it over to, once again, David Johnson, our Community Services and Recreation Director, who will walk you through the item. Dave?
Thank you, John. So Mayor and council members, as John mentioned, we'll be going through our 2021 special events, but we'll be just at this point looking at the first half of the year, in which I think my crystal ball shall be somewhat accurate. So we're going to go red light, yellow light, green light. So with the COVID impact on our community, there's obviously been restrictions. We're hoping that as the vaccine rolls out, that some of these restrictions will be reduced or removed. But at this point, there's still no clear guidance given what those reductions will be, because again, we remain under that purple category, which has a lot of restrictions. So for events that we're going to cancel, the first one is unfortunately the Athlete of the Year. This will not be canceled, I guess, in full. The typical event that we wanted to do is canceled. But we're working with the district right now to find a way to at least identify those students that will be receiving a NC2A, Division I or Division II athletic scholarship, and we should know that completely by the end of May, and we'll be publishing those athletes and their success in getting a scholarship. Tepeque's, we've met with them. Tepique will be canceling their Day of the Child event in the spring. We know that probably by spring we are not going to be able to run those large outdoor events. And then our PEP fundraiser event is canceled. However, the PEP fundraising will still happen, and those businesses or members of our community that donate will still be recognized through the many methods we have through social media, our website, and at council meetings. So that still will happen. It's just the event will be canceled. Now we go yellow light. These are our tentative events. This is, again, because my crystal ball is not that accurate. Friday night markets. This is that large-scale outdoor event that we do on Jackson Street. These will be canceled for the foreseeable future until such time that the state and county guidelines allow us to hold large outdoor events. But as soon as that is released, we'll bring those events right back. The National Day of Prayer and the Elks Memorial both occur in May. These are smaller scale events that occur outside. So our hopes is by May that we'll have the opportunity to at least hold small outdoor events. Now the Heritage Festival, which would typically have been the first Saturday in June, we are recommending to move that to August 7th to give us more time to hopefully have those restrictions dropped to allow us to conduct a large-scale outdoor event. This also applies to our summer concerts, which will start at the beginning of July. And again, our hopes is that we will have some word that those will be able to move forward. So in terms of these being tentative events, we're still booking the talent and the other activities in which would go into the Heritage Festival, which would go into summer concerts, with the knowledge that we may have to cancel them again if things do not change. So those green light items are our eco-friendly event. We will conduct this in a second year as a virtual event on our social media and website. And then our Easter Bunny photo program will operate as normal. It will be conducted the same way we did the Breakfast with Santa photos, in a very safe way, but they'll still be able to come in and take a live photo. Our recommended action is that you provide us feedback for the proposed modifications for the 2021 special events and receive and file this report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Are there comments, questions, feedback for staff on this item?
Mayor Lemons, this is Vice Mayor Olmos. Dave, I just want to say, I just congratulate you and your team just for always thinking outside the box. There's a lot of activities here that I feel that our residents are missing out on, but you guys are coming up with ideas to, to still keep them engaged, and I appreciate you guys' thoughtfulness on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we accept and receive and file the update for the 2021 special events calendar. With that, we'll move into item 12, a receive and file on the proposed commemorative activities for in memory of Cobid families.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I have heard from a few of you on this next item, and that is to recognize, in a sense, commemorate those who have unfortunately passed away in our community from the COVID virus. So we have come up with a list of ideas that we want your feedback on. And so with that, I'll turn it over once again back to Mr. David Johnson, our Community Service and Recreation Director, who will let you know what our ideas are. David?
Thank you, John. Mayor and council members. So this is an unfortunate slide that we need to show. This demonstrates that the city of Paramount, at least through the adjusted death rate in our local communities, has the highest rate. This is adjusted for 100,000 population. So it's not the actual number of deaths, but as adjusted, we're at 225, which puts us the highest among those cities listed, which are our neighbors. That is an unfortunate fact. We're also second in the adjusted rate of positivity. So if overall community impact of COVID-19, there's a lot of fatigue. Our community has gone through, like all other communities, lockdowns, and the suffering that has gone with that, a loss of activity, separations from family and friends, potentially a loss of income, and worst of all, the number of fatalities that we just mentioned. So what we're proposing are some options which could be conducted as a commemorative activity for those COVID-19 virus deaths. If you recall back following 9/11, we did a field of flags, of American flags, that filled the lawn area just north of City Hall. We're proposing something similar. The field is, the area that we have to work with is smaller because the memorial was enlarged, but on the two remaining grass areas, we could fill those grass areas with American flags, and spread out amongst those flags would be some white flags, which would be commemorative of the lives lost here in Paramount. Another way we could recognize this at the memorial site is a flower memorial, something similar to what you would see at deaths of prominent figures in our community. We would then have an area where people can bring flowers to commemorate the loss of friends, neighbors, loved ones. And we also could do a memorial garden. We could designate a portion of a park that could be turned into a garden with a memorial plaque identifying those losses in our community. Now, we have options, and we could also do a day of remembrance, and there's three options we could do here. Well, at least we're posing anyway. A designated flower. So similar to what Great Britain does to memorialize the losses they had in World War I, they designated the poppy, and you see everyone wearing that poppy on that designated Remembrance Day. We could designate a Remembrance Day and identify a similar flower, and what I was originally proposing would be a white rose. That would be something we would encourage our community to wear on that day of remembrance. Certainly city staff would wear it on that day in memory of our COVID loss. We could also, as a day of remembrance, identify a date that our community could come out in front of their homes, ring bells, whether electronic or actual, and ask that our churches at that same time ring their bells at their churches. Last day of remembrance option would be memorial lights. We would get a large-scale commercial light over here at our Memorial Plaza that would send a large prominent beam into the night sky that all could see, and ask our community to come out, again, to their porches using their phones or whatever device they'd like to also shine a beam of light into the sky. Additional activities that we are proposing that are options are street banners, the ones that would hang on the poles along our major boulevards. We could create a very simple design that would be a commemoration of those COVID losses. I proposed in the staff report a simple blue navy banner with a white rose on it with a crown, which would designate coronavirus losses. Options that I'm referring to as Lights of Hope. Along Paramount Boulevard, we could designate a space in which we would string lights over the boulevard. Those lights would remain lit until this pandemic has ended. Similarly, at Clearwater Building, we could also create a Lights of Hope display, again, which would remain up till the end of the pandemic. We're also working with Tepic and Latinas Arts Foundation right now to create a Day of the Dead event at Plaza. We could also do something during that event which would allow families that have suffered losses to add to a display and ofrenda at Plaza during that event. In terms of next steps, we are obviously seeking council direction and developing. We would then come back at whatever council decides. So we have the option to do one of these events, portions of one of these events to be combined into a single event. Or again, if I have not presented something and you have different ideas, we'd like to hear that as well. From there, once we get that direction, we can develop a cost and a timing of this event and return to City Council for your approval. We're recommending tonight that you provide staff feedback and directions on the list of COVID-19 commemoration activities as outlined in this report, and receive and file this report. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. So at this time, if you'd like to give staff some feedback, I would suggest that we go ahead and, discuss anything you want to discuss, give feedback, but that we take all of this information and, with the extra feedback that David gave us, and maybe each contact David on our own so that he could put together if there's anything that we can, all agree on or looking towards, that maybe he could come back and make a presentation of one or two of the items together or more. So we don't have to have an answer tonight, and I would suggest, like I said, that we do that. We all coordinate with David, tell him what we liked and what's been presented, or additional ideas if we have them. But certainly at this time we can move forward with any questions or comments that anybody has.
This is Councilmember again. I just think that they were all really good ideas, but one thing I think would be a great idea to fit in with our sustainability and our tree planting is maybe to plant trees and then put like a little plaque near the tree in memory of the person. Just an idea. I mean, I like the garden idea, but I think to plant a tree would be something that would be forever, always, like throughout the months.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. And that's what we're talking about now, guys. We have some of our own ideas, and maybe we can merge a few of them. I'm not going to take up time by talking about the ones that I particularly liked. I don't have anything new, but I did like a couple, and I'll be in touch with you, David, on that. But anybody else, comments, ideas, questions? Are you okay with taking this back and thinking about it and getting back to Dave with additional ideas or what you liked off the list?
This is Councilmember Aguayo. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Isabel. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for coming up with just, some of these ideas. I don't know as far as staff and the rest of the council if they've had anybody close to them either be ill, and we know my parents' story, or have somebody actually pass away because of COVID. So this is really important, so thank you. And I definitely think it's a good idea for just each of us to, find, schedule with David to go over some of these, or again, other ideas. So again, thank you, David, for putting this together, you and your staff.
Okay, Councilmember Cuellar-Stallings, I think you were next.
Yes, David, these are great ideas. I'm totally in agreement. I really in favor of quite a few of them. And I'm also in favor of an agreement with Councilmember Gillen. And yes, I'll give you a call back and give you my feedback of which ones are my favorite. Okay? Thank you. Great presentation.
Hey, David, it's Brenda. Really quickly, I just want to make sure that number 10 10 is already going to happen as an event, so we don't have to choose number 10. It's already like planned to be happening, correct?
Yes, the Ofrenda event at Plaza will happen.
Correct.
Though what we would do is obviously work with Latina Arts and Tepic to make sure we have an area that's created specifically for those families that have COVID losses.
Got it. So a certain area. Okay. And you know what? Is there anything that we need to find out if we're able to place names? Do we need to look into something? Because I know sometimes that there's
family
careful. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Peggy, for that. I couldn't get the words out, but just to confirm that.
Yeah, that would probably be a good idea for staff to pursue while we look at everything, because I don't even know, do we have all the family names?
No, we do not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we better see if we can get those, because that would certainly dictate, the memorials and how we can go about them. So David, if you could research that while we think over the proposals, that would be helpful too in us making decisions, because there could be privacy issues where we may not even be able to get them. I don't know.
Okay, will do.
Okay.
We also don't have to put the name. It could just be in memory of, someone who passed from COVID.
Yeah, we may certainly have to go with that option. It'd be lovely if we could. And maybe even it could be the voluntary one. Like if you would like your loved one, commemorated, submit the name, kind of like how we do with the veterans recognition. It's up to them to submit the names. So we have options, but that's just something David can begin to research for us so we can see what's possible and which way we want to go. So I encourage everybody, look over the list closely. Councilmember Dan submitted another idea tonight. If you have additional ideas, tell David what your favorites are. Maybe we could, rate them 1, 2, 3, so he can maybe begin to come to some kind of consensus of, maybe, like I said, one or more projects that we can do. But I think you're hearing from everybody, David, that we think it's a great idea. We think that you've proposed some great ideas. We want to move forward, and let's set this before the next council meeting for everybody to have spoken with David so that he can get busy and put together a plan for us. Okay? So with that, we'll receive and file this item also, and we're going to move into comments and committee reports from council members. And I am going to start with Vice Mayor Olmos.
Oh, great. Thank you. Wasn't ready for that one, but okay. So I think what I really wanted to share was, and I know that all of us have been approached by residents coming to us and asking us about the vaccine. Where are we going? Are we getting it? Is it coming to us? But, I think what I wanted to share tonight is all the efforts I think that all staff and city council have been putting into place to advocate for the vaccine to come to Paramount. So quick thing I just wanted to share, a letter was sent on behalf of our mayor to Governor Newsom, to push for a closer vaccine site or even choosing Paramount as a vaccine site. Our city manager and assistant city manager, they did this great letter to the California Office of Emergency Management justifying why Paramount is an optimal location for a vaccine site. And a couple of us were able to participate in a call with the White House Director of the Intergovernmental Affairs COVID-19 response team. And again, we also had the opportunity to advocate for vaccinations for our residents. So again, I just want to share with the residents to know that this is important to all of us and that we're all using every opportunity to push the agenda for the community to have access to vaccines. And actually, Mayor, that's all I have for tonight.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Vice Mayor, for being on that call and expressing Paramount's desires. We certainly appreciate it. Councilmember Aguayo.
Yeah, just a big thank you again to, Janice Hahn, the LA Food Bank, of course, Bianchi Theater, and our staff that, they make these food distributions successful for our community. The event wasn't even over, and I had already received a couple messages from residents, that they had just left, and they were really happy about, again, everything that they were receiving. So that's really, it's a blessing that, our residents have access to this, again, here in Paramount. And I want to ask the residents, almost challenge them to support our local businesses. Instead of driving to any of the nearby cities, just shop local. We have a lot of great places here in Paramount that there's almost no need for us to travel into other cities. And definitely, that we are definitely doing what we can to serve our community, considering the challenges that COVID has just placed on all of us. But just continue to be safe and just be kind, and God bless you.
Thank you. Councilmember Deanne.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm just going to read a short email I received. And it says, I've been meaning to email you about this for a while now, but it had continued to slip my mind. I live off Orange Avenue between Alondra and Somerset. Since I've lived here, I've unfortunately witnessed numerous car accidents and even a fatal hit and run on the intersection of Orange and Myrrh. And when school is in normal session, it's a danger to the kids at Zamboni Middle School. I've personally witnessed numerous cars speed through the intersection, even when there's a crossing guard ordering them to stop. I think the issue is people forget it's a residential street and speed through it. Is there any way we can get a stop sign on the corner of Myrrh and Orange, or add some speed bumps along the way? Anything to help prevent another accident. So I'm just stating it now, John, because I know you're listening, and if we could possibly look into that for this resident.
Sure, Councilman McGinn, if you could forward me the information of the resident, and we can contact them and have a one-on-one with them, and we will also get public safety out there, the motor traffic enforcement, to spend some time there on Orange Avenue as well.
Perfect. I'll send that over after the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Claire Stallings.
Yes. Well, thank you for we had this city council meeting. Thank you, David. What Brenda said, your staff always comes up with great ideas. I just want to thank you. And also, yes, the food drive was very successful. I want to thank Supervisor Janice Holmes' office, all the county volunteers. I'm even getting to know a couple of the volunteers. And I know we weren't supposed to be helping, but I had an hour or so I was able to go interact with them and at a distance, and able to interact with a couple of them that I've been helping these past few times that we had our food drive. And I also want to thank the LA County Food Bank, our city employees, for helping out too. And I received my first vaccine last Thursday. I'll admit to you, Brenda, I was petrified. I was very scared. I didn't want to do it.
You did it.
But I did it. And I'm glad I did it. My arm was sore for a couple of days. I was afraid I was going to get side effects, but that was the only thing. But thank God, I'll get my other one in 3 weeks. And yes, I hope and pray that our other residents, our senior residents, our home support service residents, and our caregivers are able to get their vaccinations so they'll be able to take care of their loved ones. And last, let me look at my notes. I want to, one of my commissioners has been very ill, and thank you to Gina. You've been trying to stick through it, and she's been very ill, but just keep her in your prayers. And she's really wants to give back to the community, and she says, I can't wait until we're be able to go out in the public and be able to interact. So I told her, I said, all of us will be grateful for that. And last, my prayers to all the residents, friends that have lost family members during this difficult period. I had a couple of family members that did end up having COVID very close to home, and it was very challenging. And but thank God, for medicine over the counter and be able to take care of them and be able to take a olla de pollo, caldo de pollo to their house. But anyway, everyone stay safe, healthy, and remember, we are Paramount. Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you, Councilmember Cuellar Stallings. Some good news to report. When attending my sanitation meeting, they did report that the virus levels in the wastewater are mirroring what we're seeing from the CDC, which is they're dropping dramatically. So that's great news. Also, as John had told us in a memo, we did meet with Caltrans virtually and the cities surrounding our borders about the homeless encampments along the off-ramps, as well as all of the trash and debris. And the good thing that came out of that is Caltrans seems more than willing to create partnerships, as well as the other cities all wanted to partner with Caltrans. So we're looking into several options that hopefully we're going to see cleaner, more inviting off-ramps in the freeways surrounding our communities. The food distribution, as some of you mentioned, went great. I applaud our staff. I heard nothing but praise from all of the LA Food Bank workers about how convenient and how easy it is and how wonderful you make it for them to be in Paramount. It's a tremendous thing that they were able to serve over 2,000 households during that time. Greatly appreciated. I also ran into the owners of the new restaurant that we're looking at at the Clearwater site at the old Pizza Press. And when I was speaking to them, they were so extremely excited about coming to our city and said that they had previewed the State of the City address that the Chamber of Commerce had put on, and that they've never been involved in a community where everybody was helping everybody else. And that was extremely inviting and exciting for them. So they were really nice guys. I'm really excited about coming to our community. I just want to thank everybody for all of their hard work, each of you council members, and for your attention. And as always, staff, we certainly appreciate you, the incredible hard work that you do, and how good you make our city look. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, John, for staff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to all of the council for the praise that you gave to the staff tonight. They definitely deserve it. They are, as I've said, the best staff that I know of that I've worked with. They're a professional team that serves this community day in, day out. Very, very faithful at their jobs. Just to echo what's been said about the regional food bank, reciprocal wise, the food bank is awesome to work with. They're very organized. They come prepared. So we love them. It's a win-win. They serve our community, and they're very, very professional at what they do. Thank you very much for the approval of the mid-year budget tonight. As I mentioned in my introduction of the mid-year budget, is definitely a challenging year financially, in the sense that we just didn't know what was going to happen, but things have turned out okay, and we're very happy with that. But please know that we will continue our conservative approach with our fiscal dealings with the accounts that we manage on a daily basis. With part of the mid-year budget, as you saw tonight, was a new lieutenant will be starting, and he will be starting tomorrow. We will introduce him to you at a future in-person meeting. So hopefully soon, if the health department releases new guidelines for indoor meetings, we can have the council back on the dais again. So we're keeping a close eye on that to see if that's going to happen. And lastly, I just wanted to bring to your attention the food truck ordinance that the city council passed late last year is working. we had our first denial of an application of a food truck that was parked on the street on Paramount Boulevard. And that food truck, although it continued to park there even after their application was denied, we had to take stronger action, and I believe the food truck has moved since then. We will entertain another application if that food truck driver would like to reapply to either go on private property or a better location on the street, as per the ordinance. But I just wanted to end with that the ordinance that you adopted, Council, is working. So with that, that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. And with that, we will adjourn to March 2nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. Thank you, everyone.